Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video, which presumably by the title you can see it's going to be another unhinged stories with Charlotte. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so I have some new products to try today while I'm telling this story. The MAC Studio Radiance foundation, I've got one of the new shades of the Nars Power Matte lipsticks. I've got the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, which is kind of still new, and I have the new RMS Luminizer. So I am going to be using some new products, but I'm not really going to be sort of talking you through what I'm doing because I'm not that good at multitasking, okay? Because this is a crazy story and it's going to require my full attention. I've got my Hogwarts coffee ready to go. I hope you guys have buckled up. Before we jump into this part of the story, if you have not watched my divorce story time, I would highly recommend you watch that video before you watch this one, because a lot of this I just think isn't going to really fully make sense if you don't know the story of my divorce. And also, to be clear, my husband Danny, who I'm married to happily now for over 10 years, this is not the same person. I've had that happen before. I've had people messaging me saying, I'm so glad you worked it out with your husband. It's like, that is not the same man. Okay, at all. He would never. So please stop slandering my poor husband. He is innocent. This is a whole other man, okay? But if you haven't watched that video, you don't care to watch it, or you watched it so long ago you can't really remember what happened, I'm going to give you a short version, a short summary of the key points so that you understand this next bit, because I feel like without these little nuggets, this next bit won't really make sense. So my ex-husband and I got divorced in 2010, or we split up in 2010. Okay, so it's a long time ago. We've all healed, everything's fine. 2010, this all happened. And I think if you're thinking it was like an amicable split where, you know, everyone was happy and we remain friends, this story, again, it won't really make as much sense. So what you need to know is we broke up when I found a list of hateful things that he'd written about me out of the blue. Like, I thought we were like a year into our marriage, and I thought everything was sunshine and roses. He was taking me to the theatre for my birthday. I found this list and was like, what's happening? This then led him to confess that he had been having an affair for several months with a work colleague. Okay, so that's how we broke up. He then continued to live in my home for the next few weeks, telling me that and going to counselling with me, and we were working on it while continuing the affair, until one day he just didn't come home. And that was how our marriage ended. I did not see or speak to that man really from that day that he just disappeared. He came to get his stuff and my dad dealt with him, and I stayed out of his way. And so I didn't really see or hear from him again, really. And this is where this story picks up. So that little bit I feel like you needed to know to understand this bit. So when we broke up, when everything like initially went down with the divorce, Facebook was really like the only social media, well, it was the only social media that I had. I don't know, maybe Instagram existed, but I didn't have an Instagram. I only had Facebook, okay? And I was one of these people back in those days, back in the day, I was one of these, you know, people that I call like friend collectors, who had like, you know, 1,000 friends and was trying to like win Facebook with how many friends I had. Now I have like 100, and I'm like never add a new person. Like, you have to have known me for like years before I'll add you on Facebook. I'm now very selective. It now is literally just my friends and family on there. But in those days, I had hundreds of friends, okay? And a lot of those people were, I'm going to give my ex a name. I'm obviously not going to say his real name. Let's call him Jeff, okay? So that was my ex's name, Jeff, for the purpose of this video. So when the like breakup and the divorce started to like go down, I very early on made a massive Facebook cull, okay? I got rid of everybody, unfriended everybody off of my Facebook who was not like fully my friend, okay? Anyone that was like our mutual friend, but I felt like was more his friend. Maybe it was, you know, I'd met them through him, or they were his family, or they were just straight up his friends or his colleagues. I unfriended all of them off of Facebook, and there's a few reasons for that. One, my main thing is I just didn't want to see anything about him or them. I wanted to protect myself. I wanted to have a safe space. I wanted to be able to say and do whatever I wanted on my Facebook. I wanted the support of my friends and family. And I just didn't want anyone there who was like a traitor or a spy or a mole, you know? I didn't want anything getting back, and I didn't want to hear or see anything. I only wanted, during that like very dark, horrible time, I only wanted my people to have access to me, you know? But there were a few exceptions to this rule. A couple of people who were very much his friends or his people that I kept as friends on Facebook for one reason or another. So there was two of them that I can remember. One was one of his best friends, who was actually one of the best men at our wedding. His like very good childhood best friend, which I know will seem like really strange. Like, why did I keep him if I was getting rid of all of Jeff's friends? It's really hard to remember what that fake name I gave him was. But they had been like childhood, you know, best friends, and he was one of the two. We had two best men at the wedding. Probably because, I mean, clearly this man couldn't commit to making a decision, could he? So there were two best men. This was one of them. And the reason I kept him was because I don't know exactly what went down. When our, like, breakup happened and everything came out and he had to obviously tell his family what he'd done, from what I understand, they had a huge row because his friend, let's call him Ben, his friend and me had become very close. We had like a sort of brother-sister relationship. I really loved Ben. He became, you know, a really close, good friend of mine. And during the like breakup, he was so kind and supportive of me. He was checking on me all the time. And I know I think they actually fell out for quite a long time over everything that happened in his treatment of me. And so I sort of very much felt his love and support and that he was on my side. He wasn't going to be like posting anything about them as a couple or anything like that. And I just really couldn't stomach losing him. He really was an important person to me and become a very close friend of mine. And it's very hard when you go through like a marriage breakup or just a very long-term relationship breakup, you lose everyone connected to that person. You know, they had, you know, kids in the family, nephews, nieces that you come to love, you know, their parents become your in-laws, their siblings become your friends, and you lose them all along with, you know, your spouse at that time. And yes, could you kind of keep them to some degree, but it's just not going to work long term, is it? It's going to be too awkward. So Ben was, I'm just making such a hash of my eyebrows, by the way. Normally they look better than this, but it's very hard to do on camera. The mirror is miles away and I'm trying to talk to you and it's just going horribly, so forgive that. Allow it. So I kept Ben on my Facebook friends, knowing that he was like, you know, very supportive of me, was on my side. And at that time, I think had sort of ended his friendship with Jeff. And the other person that I kept from Jeff's sort of side of, you know, the family or side of the friends was a girl called, let's call her Jess. So she was married to Jeff's other best man at the wedding. So she was the wife of one of Jeff's best friends, not really a friend of Jeff. And actually, I think they didn't really get along. However, we were godparents to her children. So one, you know, we always got along great. I knew she wasn't a big fan, I don't think, of Jeff. And I was godmother to her kids. And that was important to me. You know, that was a responsibility that I cared about. I cared about her and her children, and you know, she wanted me very much to stay as their godmother, and you know, she kept in touch with me. She was very kind and supportive of me. So those were the sort of two people that stayed on my Facebook friends list after we broke up, that were sort of on his side of the tracks, if that makes sense. So fast forward 2 years later, I think I was actually remarried at the point when this next part happened. Okay, that's how long it was later. I'm now, thank goodness, happily remarried. I might have even had Aoife, my first child, by then. I know it was a good few years later, maybe like 5 years later after the divorce, when out of the blue, out of nowhere, I get a Facebook message, like a DM on Facebook from Jess. I can't remember all of these names, okay? From Jess, which says, "Hi Charlotte, I know what the answer is going to be." I'm sort of general, like I'm giving you a gist of what it said. I can't remember word for word, but this was kind of the gist of what she said. She was very embarrassed, clearly very uncomfortable, but she messaged me saying something along the lines of, "Hi Charlotte, I know what the answer is going to be, but Jeff has asked me to message you and ask you if you would be willing to speak to his priest in order to help him marry the girl who was his mistress, who he left me for when we were married, in the cathedral." So here's the situation. This girl that Jeff had the affair with, he is now, they're like still in a relationship. Obviously they've now got engaged. They want to get married, but she is a Catholic, right? I won't say what country she came from, but she was from a very religious, very strong Catholic country. And it was very important to her family, apparently, that she get married in this specific cathedral. However, because Jeff had been married previously and was a divorcee, this was like exceedingly frowned upon in the Catholic Church, and especially in this specific place. It was normally, if you cannot get married there, if you're a divorcee, you're not allowed to get married in that cathedral. They won't allow it. They're very, very strict. And that was that. So the only way they had been told by the Catholic priest that they would be able to get married in this church is if he spoke to me, the ex-wife, and like interviewed me about, I guess, our marriage and the divorce and how everything went down. So she was very clear that she didn't want to ask me this and didn't think I should be being asked this, and that clearly my answer was going to be no. And she had indicated in these messages that she had told Jeff all of this. She'd made it very clear it was not okay to ask me this, and that if it was her, she'd laugh in your face, and that the answer will be no, and there's no point. But he had basically been begging and pressuring her, knowing that we were still, friends on Facebook and we were still sort of vaguely in contact. He had been like begging and pressuring her to ask me to do that. Can you Adam and Eve it? Can you actually Adam and Eve it? This is why you need to know, I think, the first part of the story, because like I said, if we had just broken up and been like amicable and we're still friendly, then I think this would have been a different vibe. I just think because of the way we broke up and the fact that this person that, you wanted to marry and it was an issue for, was literally the person you had an affair with. And you want me to help you. It seemed unreasonable to ask, The other thing I felt about it at the time, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but for me, I felt like it was a bit much that he had asked someone else to ask this question. I just felt like if you felt like this was okay to do, you really should have done it yourself. Like, you shouldn't have made poor Jess ask me this. And I just think I would have at least respected the kahunas to speak to me yourself, because I just think you're asking something really a lot of me, and yet you don't even have the audacity to ask me yourself. Like, you're too scared to come and speak to me, but you want me to have a whole chat with your priest for you. It just seemed a little uneven of a fair deal, is what I thought. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking that I told them all where to go and that was the end of it. But I didn't. Here's the thing about me and feelings and thoughts I had that entire time, okay? So when the breakup first happened, the divorce and everything after that, I really felt like it was very important to keep it classy the entire time. I wanted to like feel like I was doing the right thing. I was staying true to myself and my morals and my values and who I am as a person. I really felt like that was the only way I was going to come out of this situation on top. I didn't want to let myself down. I didn't want to like send, you know, death threats or bully someone online. I didn't want to go storming into their home. I didn't want to go ranting on Facebook, or I didn't want to do anything that I would regret or feel ashamed about afterwards, because obviously in this situation I had nothing to feel bad or guilty or ashamed or embarrassed about, because I hadn't done anything wrong. You know, they had, and I really wanted to keep the high road. I really felt like it was important for me and my feelings about myself and my pride and my self-worth that I stayed, like, regardless of what they're doing, you know, the whole like when they go low you go high. It was important to me how I carried myself through this situation, and I really am to this day very proud of the fact and the way that I did all of that. I really did stick to that, and I did myself proud, and I coped with it with grace and dignity, and I kept all of that stuff. And I just want to say, if you don't, that's also fine. I fully support whatever road you choose under these circumstances, but that was just what I felt like I needed to do. I wanted to come out of it saying that I had been respectful and kind and all of that throughout this, regardless of how I was treated in return. So I decided that I was going to think about it, okay? I didn't just go back and say, are you joking? You know, swear words. I wanted to consider it. I wanted to be comfortable and happy with my decision, and that I was doing the right thing, that was the fair right thing. I wanted to think about it rather than just your gut instinct, which is to go, is this a sick joke? So I did. I thought about it. I considered it. I spoke to my husband about it a lot. We had lots of conversations. I mean, he literally thought the whole thing was hilarious. He could not believe the audacity of this man to not even be asking me himself, but to have got his mate to ask me. I mean, that was really the cherry on the top, wasn't it? So we talked about it, and ultimately I said no. I said no because I just didn't know. One, I had been living a happy, free life away from all of these people and had long sort of forgotten that they existed. Like, I genuinely have never really wished them any ill. Maybe the first couple of days, I'll say that. But after that, I never wanted them to sort of not work out or to like not be able to live happily ever after, because then what was the point of it all? I've always felt like, you know, I moved on and was very, very happy. And for me, although, you know, the method was appalling, the outcome was a much happier life for myself and a much more worthy partner for me. Like, I always say that my husband, Danny, is the reward that I got for that first marriage and everything that happened to me. This was my karma for surviving that, and the way that I carried myself through that was the world's best husband, the world's greatest man and father. That's what I got, and that's what I deserved for that original situation. So I have never sort of wanted ill for them. I think the best scenario here was that everybody survived that and lived happily ever after, and then, you know, maybe it was worth it for them as it was for me. So, you know, I'm really happy in my life, happily married. I don't have any reason, like, there's certainly nothing in me at this point, years later, that wants to like sabotage them or stop them getting married, or even cares whether they are or not. You know, I had a lot of questions, a lot of people asking me on my original divorce story time, like, are they still together? Like, did they end up getting married? Are they still together now? And I have just I've never known. I never had any wish to know anything. I've never sort of Facebook stalked them. In fact, the reason I ended up having to unfriend Ben, the best friend, was because he actually posted a photo of the two of them together, not the woman, but him, the two, you know, Ben and Jeff, he posted a photo of the two of them, and I was like, oh, like, I just don't, if you're going to start posting photos of that person, I'm so sorry, I can't continue to be your friend on Facebook, because I just will be violently ill. So yeah, that's how, unfortunately, those two people who were left ended up booted off my Facebook list. So yeah, I really did think about it, but one, I didn't want any more attention from these people. I was flabbergasted that their names were back in my life as it was. And I was concerned because clearly, here's the thing, they were asking me to speak to their priest so that they were allowed to get married. But I felt like anything I say to this priest, if he's going to ask me about like the divorce, how it happened, all of that stuff, that's not going to help you. If anything, it's going to make it much, much worse. Like, I don't know what they've told this priest. I wouldn't have thought it was the truth though, would you? Because otherwise surely they'd be saying, no, get out, we never want to see you here again, wouldn't they? But no, they were asking me to speak to this priest, and I felt like they must have lied about the circumstances, otherwise I feel like it wouldn't even be a consideration. So then if I speak to this priest, I guarantee you I'm not lying for you. You know, if I speak to them, I'm going to be telling them the truth to my answer. You know, the answers that I tell them are going to be the truthful answers, and therefore it's going to be like I've sabotaged them, and I feel like that then becomes dangerous. Are they then going to start, you know, having a go at me or be angry with me for telling the priest the truth, or not answering, or not, you know, having the outcome that they want because of my conversation with this priest? That was my concern, was that this was like inviting them back into my space, giving them my phone number, all of this stuff that I was going to have to do. And so I ultimately, how I came to the decision to say no was not out of spite. It was not out of wanting them not to get married. I really didn't want to sabotage them. I also just really didn't want to be involved in it. I didn't want to be an active part in the wedding, is how I felt. And I just felt like it was too much to ask. And I really didn't think that phone call that I was going to have with the priest was going to be at no cost to me, my happiness, my well-being. I felt like I was going to have to go through this whole interview about the worst time of my life for their benefit, the people who caused its benefit, and at like probably pretty serious cost to my peace and my happiness, because it's going to, like, you know, take me back there. I'm going to have to talk about all those horrible times and everything that happened, and I don't even know this priest, I don't know this person. It just felt like if I can't do this with no cost to myself, I can't do it. That's how I felt like. I felt like there's too much of a risk that this is going to be hard, difficult, upsetting, traumatic, and I also kept coming back to the fact that Jeff didn't even ask me himself. I just felt like this is really not fair, because this is fully, you're asking me to do this at detriment to myself and my peace and quiet and my happy life that I'm leading right now. And you wouldn't even ask me yourself. Like, the balance there was just mad. I just felt like the fact that you're not sort of putting yourself through a slightly uncomfortable, awkward phone call with your ex, but you're asking me to put myself through an even worse phone call with your priest in order to allow you to get married in the location that you want. I just felt like it was really an unfair thing to ask, and I didn't feel like I could do it without it being at cost to myself. So I said no, and I was happy with my decision. I got to the place where I was like, I want to be able to, if I'm going to say no, I want to be able to say no and feel happy with my decision, feel like it was a fair choice that I had considered, and I did do all of that. I'd thought about it, I considered it, and I felt like the fair answer, the reasonable answer was no. So I went back to Jess and I said no, and she sort of said, you know, good, that's the right decision, you shouldn't be doing that, like, I totally agree, I will let them know. And then I unfriended Jess off of Facebook, because honestly I just felt like this was, I I just think if it was me, I would have just refused to do it and said, if you want to ask that, you should have asked it yourself. I really didn't appreciate, you know, the fact that I had sort of kept that door open to that life and then it had been used in that way. I was disappointed and I was upset. So that was the last person from his life that went from my Facebook, sadly. I just, you know, I needed people to respect my peace and my new life and to leave me alone. And if you weren't going to do that, I couldn't keep you in my life. So you think that's the end of the story, don't you? But it's not. So I said no, and you think that that should be the end, like I said, of the story. You think people who've asked such a audacious question and then are told, you know, reasonably and fairly, no, that's too much to ask, too much to expect. The answer's no. You'd think that would be the end of it and we'd be like, fair enough. I mean, who really could ask her to do that? And that would be that. But no, you'd be wrong. You'd be wrong. Cut to, I don't know, a couple of months later. I will say it was long enough later that I had fully forgotten this had happened. I'd gone back to my nice, happy, peaceful life, forgetting that any of these people existed, when I walk into my office one day, and my office was a sort of open plan, you know, hot desking type office, and we had an admin, like secretary, support person who does all the mail. I walk into my office one, I don't know, Wednesday morning when all was quiet. Not even a mouse was stirring, no expectation that anything crazy was going to happen, when our admin lady comes over to me and is like, Charlotte, I was doing the mail this morning and this letter has arrived for you and I thought I'd give it to you. Normally, I think she just used to sort of put it on her desk, but she was like, this letter, it looks like it's to do with the police. There's some kind of it was like a serious looking letter. And so I didn't want to leave it on your desk, so I thought I'd hand it to you. So this envelope, the reason she was like, what is this? It looks very dramatic, is because on the front of it, I can't remember exactly what it said. It said it had like this stamp that did literally look like a court stamp. Like it looked like a summons, this envelope. And it basically said something along the lines of, from the diocese of the blah de blah. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I do remember it said diocese of something. And I was like, my heart was in my chest. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to jail. I wasn't sure what I was going to jail for, I'll be honest with you. I had no idea. But I thought, oh, they finally caught me. They finally got me for whatever it is that I've done. I have no idea. I was terrified. I opened it with shaking hands, with twitching palpitations of the heart, thinking, oh my God, what is this? What it is a letter from this priest who wants to talk to me. So these people who'd had the audacity to ask me to help them get married in the cathedral that they wanted, who had asked their friend to Facebook message me on their behalf to ask me this unhinged question, and then been told no, had told the priest that I had said yes. And the only way that they had of contacting me, because they didn't have my address, they didn't have my phone number because I didn't want them to have it, they had sent this request to my place of work, where I work. Even though I'd said no. So the letter basically said, hello, Charlotte, or dear Charlotte, I'm sure they said, my name is so-and-so and I am writing to you because these two people's names are wanting to get married in my church or something. It said basically that in order, as per the Catholic faith or as per the rules, I need to conduct an interview with you. In order for this to be allowed. Here's my phone number, please call me and ask to speak to my name at a time of your choosing. So that's gracious. I get to choose the time. When I tell you my flabber was ghasted, I literally, like, just when you think the peak of audacity has been reached, no, there's a higher peak. Just when you think the limit of cheek has been achieved, no, a new limit gets created. Can you actually believe that anybody would go about this stuff? I couldn't, but I will say it really did help me feel justified in my decision. I don't think I ever felt guilty or badly about the decision I made, because I just literally thought no one would agree to doing this. I just don't think anyone under these exact circumstances would agree to being involved with this process and going through this phone call. But, you know, I'm a nice person. Generally, I'm pretty kind. I want to do anything I can to help people 99.9% of the time. So it wasn't really my natural, like, it wasn't really my usual nature to not do someone a favour that they've asked of me. So it wasn't without like a slight bit of like, you know, I would like to do it, but I can't do it without it being at cost to me. And, you know, so it slightly pained me to say no initially. But when I got that letter, and I realised that these people had just completely disregarded my wishes to be left alone and left out of their wedding process, had then given the priest my place of work address and had this letter sent anyway. I think it's just, you know, there was really no better, like, indicator that I'd made the right decision, because it just seems crazy to have asked and expected me to do all of this stuff and go out of my way and speak to these people to help them get married, but they literally just won't do the one thing I've asked, which is leave me alone. So I felt like when that happened, I felt so justified, and it really had just said, look, these are not people who would respect or do anything for you. Like, they won't even just leave you alone and leave you out of it. So I was definitely in the right to have not done this insane thing for them. I felt that it just felt like it really clarified and put the lid on the fact that I had made the right choice. And as I said, there's literally nothing that I could have possibly told that priest that would have in any way done anything other than ensure that those people were literally never allowed to set foot in a church again, let alone help them get married in one. So yeah, I think I made the right choice at the end of the day. Now, I don't know, I didn't reply to the letter, okay, just to be clear. I didn't reply, I didn't call the priest, I just put it in the shredder, and that was the end of that. I just fully ignored it. Still, to that day, I hadn't heard from Jeff himself. He just had given the priest my work address and still hadn't had any actual conversation with me himself about any of it. So I don't know what happened as of that point. I don't know if they were allowed to get married where they wanted to in the end. I have no idea. I still don't know if they did get married. It would seem like they did. I hope they are all living happily ever after and that everything is fine. But yeah, I am glad that I managed to not be involved in it against my will. So I am very intrigued as to what you guys make of this story. I wonder how many of you feel like you would have done it regardless. I wonder how alone I am in my feeling that that was a little too much to go through. I wonder what you guys think of it all. Do you think it's as bonkers and unhinged as I do? Or do you think that was a fully reasonable request? Now, the comments of my previous, like, divorce story time went south really, really quickly. So I don't know that I'm going to stay hanging about in these comments for very long, because talk about divorce on this platform and, like, the world's worst type of men just suddenly appear on your channel. So if that happens again, you won't catch me around here, and I may turn the comments off very quickly if they start to go in the direction they went last time with all the crazy women hating men. But I thought that was an interesting unhinged story to share with you guys, because I just think it really raises a lot of interesting moral questions, doesn't it? And I also think there's lessons to be learned here. Okay, there's lessons to be learned. If you have an affair and cheat on your spouse and leave them for another woman or another man, the lesson, the takeaway here is don't then ask them to be involved in your wedding to that person, okay? Leave them alone. And if you are a friend of someone who has done this, also leave them alone. That would be, I think the takeaway is leave people alone in general, isn't it? That's an important life message. Okay, so there you have it. That is my makeup done for the day. That is an unhinged story with Charlotte. I hope you enjoyed this video and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.